everybody. Welcome back to the Gnomon live stream on today's installment of the Artist Journey. Today we're going to be talking with two recruiters who have worked with top studios. We're going to be answering the question, what are studios looking for when they hire artists? And I know that this is a really big question that a lot of people want answers to, so we're excited to get into it today. But before we do, I just wanted to say thank you to Lenovo for sponsoring today's stream. Thanks to their generous sponsorship, Gnomon is able to continue to provide events, live streams, interviews such as these as totally free to the public. So we're glad that you're here. So with that, I wanted to introduce our two guests today, Grazia Como and Steve Meim, and we'll just go and bring them up on the stream now. Bring them on in. Hi guys, thanks for joining us today.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, great to have you. Rather than kind of tell your story for you, I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to kind of not only talk to these guys about what you do, but maybe even just start with how did you get into what you were doing, and what is it like to do the job that you do? So into a little bit of the origin story, if we could. And I think, Grazia, we can begin with you. That's fine.
Sure, thank you. Super excited to be here, and thank you to the audience for joining us today. So my name's Grazia Como. My pronouns are she, her. I currently am what is this right there? Program manager recruiting for outreach and engagement at Netflix Animation. Prior to that, I worked at DreamWorks for about 13 years. And then prior to that, I worked in the visual effects commercial entertainment industry for 20-something years. I've been in it for a while.
Yeah.
Got my start many years ago. I actually went to community college. I'm a first-gen LA girl, went to Mount SAC, studying architecture. And that was at a time where architecture was transitioning from drafting boards, pencil, to mechanical pencils, to digital. And so it was a really interesting time because I wasn't quite sure that I was truly invested in being in the architect industry. And then someone happened to come talk to my community college about an animation program that they were starting up in the Bay Area, which sounded really cool because like you could take these skills and transition them from, architecture into entertainment. So I was like, okay, this sounds cool. Why not? I'll give it a shot. Moved up north, went to school, and yeah, learned a little bit about CG animation, filmmaking, all of that good stuff. And I think I was just at the right place at the right time and just took that step that someone came to that school and spoke about opportunities in the industry. And I got my first job as a render watcher on a small film called Ants. I don't know if anybody remembers Ants. Yeah. And that was kind of the first start to my career. I will say I'm not an artist. I couldn't draw. I thought I really wanted to do something like effects and blow things up because I thought it was really cool to just blow crap up. And that would be fun. But I found out pretty early on that, I wasn't quite skilled for that. I didn't have a lot of technical skills, but enough to be a little bit dangerous. And then I think it was just a lot of just the customer service aspect of working in the industry and working with teams that really helped me, I think, get that first start in the industry. And I've been in it ever since, mostly focused on more in the recruiting, HR, education space within animation.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and quite a journey. You know the part of the industry that you're in inside and out. Then you really understand everything that you're hiring for. Yeah, no, definitely. It sounds like you do. Yeah. All right. So yeah, Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Steve Meim. I am a recruiter, game dev, and international speaker. I've been in the video game industry for 15 plus years, and I got my start as a video game tester at PlayStation on a game called NBA. So National Basketball Association for the PlayStation 2. I have a bit of a unique, journey into the industry. Out of high school and college, I realized I studied accounting originally. And after getting my associates in accounting, I realized that, that's just not the life for me. Like looking at spreadsheets and numbers all day, I just couldn't handle it. So I bounced around from job to job to job until I found my first gig in the video game industry as a video game tester. And that first day on the job, I had a controller in my hand and I realized I was getting paid for it. And I absolutely fell in love with the industry. So going from a tester to working in production, I went to a studio called San Diego Studio. They're best known for a game called MLB The Show, so Major League Baseball. And I absolutely loved my time there, being working my way up to being a production manager and really dealing with disciplines all across the board, from designers to programmers to artists to even IT and security and sound professionals. And one of the things that I noticed is that I loved helping people in their careers. So I got into volunteering for different roles with the recruiting team. I'd go out to a bunch of different colleges and universities and help people just kind of figure out their journey into working in video games. And during the whole pandemic, I had an epiphany. I was like, how do I want my career to pan out? And I know that it was fun to kind of, work in video games and see my name scroll in the credits. And I came to a conclusion that, you know what, I want to help other people have that same feeling and not only have the pride of working on some awesome titles, but also being paid very well for it. And that's why I transitioned to being a recruiter. So out of PlayStation, I went to a company called Onward Play, which is an agency which has video game roles for all across the world. So with companies like Ubisoft, Blizzard, PlayStation, Riot Games. And then from there, I transitioned to my most recent gig, which was Riot Games, where I was recruiting for roles all across live games. So there was League of Legends, Valorant, Wild Rift, and several more. So that's what brings me here today. And hopefully I can help some folks out.
Yeah, awesome. I love both of your stories because I think for a lot of aspiring artists out there, they think of the kind of studios they want to work for, and then they'll immediately think of like maybe their dream project or their dream IP, and then they'll immediately think of like the creatives in the pipeline making that thing. And like, well, who do I need to contact? Well, it's probably the art director or the producer or whatever. But they don't know that a lot of people don't have a good perspective on what a recruiter is, and what their role is for these studios. And I think a lot of people don't realize that people who are, obviously both of you, not only have done work to help people get hired and get into that, but you've done the work yourself. You've been a part of production at some level. And I think that's why it's so important to hear from you, because you understand both worlds, right? You know how to be, in it, kind of making it, being a part of that process. But then your job is kind of I would say, if you don't mind me paraphrasing, is you're kind of like that avatar of like, this is what we need. This is what we're looking for. This is what the actual job is. So it's really exciting to be talking with both of you today. So I just want to let our viewers know it's one housekeeping thing really quickly. If you're in need of closed captioning on the stream, you're going to be able to get that if you go to our Facebook live feed. So please head over there if you need closed captioning. And then what we're going to do right now, guys, is we're going to get into a bit of a conversation for the next 20, 30 minutes. And then I want to reserve time at the end of that conversation to take questions from you in the chat. So whatever platform you're watching this on, please feel free to type, what you want to know from recruiters working in the industry, what your questions are. And I would say this is not necessarily the forum to like drop links and like, here's my portfolio and that kind of stuff, but this is a little bit more like what, who do I talk to, or how do I present myself, whatever you need to know about the industry. And we'll get to that a little bit later. But to jump into it with each of you, I've got a few questions that I wanted to kind of use as conversation starters. And the first is, I think I'd like to know what, based on all of the interactions that you have with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of artists and creatives, what are some things that you wish more artists knew when they're looking to get hired? Like, are there some knowledge gaps you'd like to fill in for people?
Yeah, want me to start?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always knowledge gap, right? Because we don't know what we don't know until you're in it. And a lot of that just comes with on the job, like learning, and and that's the challenge, getting the job. But I would say, like, lot of the knowledge gaps, and it's going to vary, right? I think it depends on the individual person, what they want to pursue. But if I had to just summarize or a high level theme, I think particularly for animation and particularly like for feature animation or even series animation, I think the key thing is where I see the gap is thinking yourselves as a content creator, that you're telling a story, right? And in any kind of piece of work that you're trying to do, always think about what is that core theme, what is that core story that you're trying to say in your own authentic voice, and staying true to that, because you have to think about yourself regardless of where you want to be in the production pipeline. You're a storyteller, and you're either telling stories through storyboards, you're either telling storyboard or stories through your visual art, or even through your model, right? You're telling a story about this character, this piece. That's one thing, and so I think that's a piece where there tends to be a little bit of a gap. And then also thinking from the lens of the industry is a collaborative environment, and it's iterative, so it's a lot of getting feedback and critiques and those sorts of things, and it's really there to help elevate, right? Because everyone's working together to bring someone's vision to life. And so being able to understand how to self-critique your work is really important. And right, tying those together. So storytelling, understanding the story that you're trying to tell, and how do you execute that through whatever skills or interests that you have.
Yeah, awesome.
Does that answer your question? The question?
Totally. No, it totally helps. Yeah. And what about for you, Steve?
So from my perspective, there's so many things that I wish the artists knew. If I had to narrow it down to a handful, the first one is how to be able to promote yourself respectfully. And what I mean by that is understanding that, especially coming fresh out of school, you want to get everybody to know of your portfolio and the skills that you have. But a big part of that is, one, getting people to know you, like you, trust you, and know that you're available. So that makes a little acronym, TALK, T-A-L-K. So let's go from backwards to front. So K is they have to know you, right? So if a company is going to hire you, they need to know that you exist. And I know some artists struggle with doing the whole self-promotion and putting themselves out there. But the thing is, like, there's that saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It goes even deeper than that. It's not who you know, but who knows you. So that's where a channel like LinkedIn in particular is something where you can continue to promote yourself as an artist and get known by other people in the industry, so that you're able to show your work to an audience of professionals that are looking for artists, right? So that's why I say get yourself known first. So going back to talk, L is likability. So how do you get people to like who you are as a person and get to know what are your quirks? Do you have a sense of humor? Do you work well with a team? Do you make promises and keep promises? So having likability has to do with, do they know you as a person? And the only way you can get to like somebody is through constant interactions. It's very difficult in just a 1 5-minute conversation to really like someone, because the truth is, when it comes to getting to know somebody, it takes constant interactions and constant exposures to that person. Going to A is availability. So making sure that you're available at the right location, at the right price point to the positions that you're applying for, because recruiters, that's something that we definitely want to keep in mind, because there are logistical things that we need to keep an eye out for. So if I'm looking for a role to fill in Los Angeles, I'm focusing on folks that are in the Los Angeles area, as opposed to, whatever part of the world that I may be recruiting for. And then T stands for trust. So can I trust that you can get the job done? And the best way to do that is to have prior experience of doing that thing. So for artists in particular, having a portfolio that matches directly with the company that you're applying to. So if your portfolio is full of ultra realistic types of graphics and environments, like you're more likely to get a job applying to video game companies that have that same aesthetic. So hyper realistic versus stylized. Know what your portfolio is versus the company that you're applying to. So those are my first recommendations for things that I wish artists knew.
Yeah, and I like that acronym too. That helps kind of put it together. And along the same lines of the previous question, I have a friend who's, like you guys, a veteran in the industry, a lot of experience, and he'll kind of describe what both of you said as like, you need to give the studio the hamburger they're ordering, like give them the meal they're looking for. Don't try to impress them with filet mignon or this or that. But it's also good to find a way to stand out, get noticed, that sort of a thing. So either by way of examples of experiences you've had with people that you've worked with in recruiting, or tips or whatever you'd like to say, can you guys share anything about any tips on how someone might be able to not just sort of present themselves in that standard way that you see hundreds of times every day, but kind of what are tips to be able to stand out to a recruiter? And Steve, I'll put you in the hot seat this time. You go first.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So some amazing examples of people that stood out. So one in particular is somebody who went to a video game conference, GDC specifically, and he did tons of research on LinkedIn to find people that worked at different companies, and he memorized their faces. And when he went to GDC, he stood at the top of the escalators and saw people as they were coming up into the conference and made mental notes on making connections with all of them. And that was one of those things where he was able to put himself in an environment like a conference, which is something that I absolutely recommend, because that's where you have a high concentration of video game developers from all over the world. So how to get to know them, and then plus you're able to build relationships with people on a one-on-one basis. It's not just online, but you actually get to have a conversation with somebody and get to know who they are as human beings. And that goes a long way when it comes to, okay, if we're looking for a role, who are the people that I already know, like, and trust that I can reach out to? So that was one example that I have, is somebody that went to a video game conference, found people, researched them online, and was able to build relationships with them. A second example that I have is an artist that found a job because he played basketball with a lot of other game developers. So we were all playing out in a pickup basketball at some locations, and during conversations with people that we played with, we found out that this one person was an artist. And because they built that relationship through playing games, you got to learn, like, is this person a team player? Do they communicate effectively? And then, oh, by the way, this person is an artist as well. So that at least gave them the opportunity to showcase their portfolio, but they built the relation first through it wasn't just, hey, can you take a look at my portfolio? There were some things that they had in common in the first place.
Yeah, that's crafty stuff, like, in a good way. That's the going that extra mile. What about for you, Grazia? What have you experienced in terms of what tends to stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of different things. And again, it kind of just depends on what we're looking for. But I think, to Steve's point, like, definitely the networking is really important, because, that is something where you're going to build your community. And that community is what's going to hopefully help you connect to the people in the industry that hopefully you'll find your pathway into the industry. But I think it's that proactiveness, right? The proactiveness of, if you're really interested and passionate in pursuing whatever, if it's gaming, feature film series, finding those resources out there and leaning into those resources. So if it's going to conferences, and building your connections and networks, like, really, like, right, that to me already shows that I've seen students travel from all over the world to get to some sort of festival or conference just so they can, like, learn more about the industry, connect, or see what talent's there. And that to me is like, right, wow, like, you just came from, like, the South African continent because you're so passionate about animation and you really want to, you know, or wherever. That's just one example.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that shows initiative. And that's really important. Or leaning into online, right? So coming to these types of events and asking really thoughtful, meaningful questions, those sorts of things is going to help. Like, oh, I remember this person who asked this really fantastic question. And, you know, it showed like they truly did their research. They truly understand what they're interested in, what they want to be pursuing, and they were able to communicate that in a very clear, concise way. That just shows me that this is someone who really understands what they want to be doing, where they want to be going, and they're taking that initiative in terms of how to get there. You know, and that, right, that could be reaching out on LinkedIn. I have a lot of times where someone just like, hey, just want to connect. This is my portfolio. Is there a job that I'm a fit for? I'm like, maybe, but I need more context, right?
Yeah.
I need a little bit more. How about like, hi, I saw your talk, or I love to introduce myself, and thinking about those. And that ties into communication skills, right? That's those soft skills pieces that we were talking about. And that's how that shows up in an actual example of even as simple as how you connect with someone, either virtually, or how you introduce yourself if you happen to have the opportunity to meet someone in person at an event or whatever it is, to introduce yourself, your interests, your passions, and then you lead into, this is my work and this is what I like to be doing. These are the stories I want to be telling, or this is how I want to be contributing to the industry. And that, to me, are those sorts of things that help someone stand out.
Yeah, that's so helpful, I think, because I want to lean into the soft skills that you brought up in just a second, because that's sort of the next topic I wanted to discuss. But before we do, I wanted to follow up to something I think both of you are pointing to, which is, you know, the recruiter is someone that you have the opportunity to have initiative to reach out to, and depending on how you reach out and communicate, an artist can actually add value to you as a recruiter by not sort of putting all the work in your side of the court to say, like, you know, you go find out what's, you know, you do the research and tell me where I can fit in your studio. But this idea of like, I'm collaborating with you in the way that I'm reaching out to you, and being helpful. And I think, you know, something that comes up a lot, I think, especially for artists, because a lot of us can be more socially introverted, but simultaneously, I think for a lot of artists, authenticity is really important. And there's a little bit of that, I think, social barrier of like, I don't want to come across as fake or schmoozy or like kind of, like, hey, what's that? Like, I need to figure out how to be me, but to do all the kind of stuff that you guys are saying. And I'm trying to, I'm sure there's a question in there somewhere, but I think, is there anything you guys could say that might help encourage artists that are trying to figure out how to stretch their skill sets to be able to be more communicative, to be a little bit more outgoing than they normally would be in a lot of social situations, but not to come across as, I think everybody's scared of like, I don't want to seem like I'm trying to bug somebody or take advantage of them or be slimy or that sort of thing. Is there anything you guys can speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, the best, if I trying to find the question and then respond.
It's
totally
thing.
Cool. I think what I would say is one of the ways to, because you touch on something like, I'm naturally an introvert, right? So even though I've been in the industry and I've been on stage and presented, it's taken me a very long time to get really comfortable in that space. And that comes with practice. So I would say, like, you know, some people are just naturally great at walking in a room and striking up conversations with strangers. It takes me a little bit more time for that. So what I would say is, like, find opportunities where you can be with a community of peers or people that, right, have the same passions, that want to pursue the same things, and use that as an opportunity to build your communication skills, to just even learn the language around, like, the entertainment industry. There's a lot of just business acumen that comes with, working in film or games or whatever that might be, and visual effects. And so I think being a part of community is really a great way to help develop those skills. So that way, if you find yourself in a situation where you are now in front of a recruiter, you hopefully have had some practice, right? Because you've had similar conversations with these people in this community that just also make you think a little differently, or it's all of those things, right? And so I think that's really important. There's a lot of organizations out there that are very focused on, talent looking to get into the entertainment industry, into film and animation. They host all kinds of events. They bring in people to do talks, just like what Gnomon's doing here. And so just being here and listening to this, hopefully, right, you're going to develop those skills, or there's things that the dots are going to connect that will help you kind of better communicate.
Yeah, it's super helpful to hear. I think everybody tends to assume, oh, they're a recruiter, they're extroverted, but maybe the person you're talking to is a little bit more like you than you think they are. And that should put people at ease. Yeah, Steve, what did you want to speak to that?
So one of my favorite quotes is, "You'll get everything you want in life if you help enough people get what they want." And with that statement in mind, that's how I built my entire philosophy on how I progressed through the video game industry. And my philosophy was, whenever I meet somebody, in my head, I think, how can I be of service to the person across from me? And when I focus on other people, as an introvert, it helps me get out of my own head and the emotions that I'm feeling. And I'm focused on genuinely wanting to help the other person across from me. And because just like was mentioned, to put yourself in a community around the people that you want to, in the industry that you want to be around, when you find ways of being of service to those people, that's how opportunities open up to you. Because when you're able to genuinely care for other people, like subconsciously, I understand that people are going to be like, oh, if Steve brings that mentality every time I have an interaction with him, he's probably going to bring that same mentality into work, and he's then going to be a value add to everybody in the company, and not somebody who's just purely selfish in their motivations. So that was one of those things that I learned, is like, how can I genuinely listen to other people, find what are the things that they're interested in, and how can I be of service to them? And I'm not the most technical person in the world. My skill set, I would say, is not very good. But in the industry, I've been a motion capture athlete. I've written newsletters. I've spoken on stage. I've helped be security guard for people. I've helped with testing teams and research teams. And all of these things came because I just get to know people and ask, how can I be of service? And then when I do that, all of the opportunities started to open up to me.
Yeah. No, I think, and that takes us really well into a little bit of conversation about soft skills, because I think the idea of soft skills these are skills that are not necessarily directly related to your technical acumen or your artistic execution in your portfolio. It's all that communication stuff. But these are skills that can be learned by anyone, and don't have to be done in a purely extroverted sort of way. They can be done in an authentic way that fits the person who's trying to embody them. So could each of you speak a little bit to maybe some examples, like when you say a good communicator, or you say someone who is able to kind of bring value to the situation, that kind of stuff. What are some examples of like learnable soft skills that you guys feel would be really important for artists to focus on, in addition to doubling down on their portfolio and making their work great?
So for me, examples of good communication skills is showing ways that in the communications that you're not just purely selfishly motivated. Now, I understand wanting to go and, hey, I need a job, I need to pay my bills and things of that nature. In my opinion, like, desperation is not a good that's not a good philosophy or not a good kind of strategy to get a job. So being able to make connections with others, and kind of going back to what I said, is find ways that you can be of service. Like the thing is, like, don't think so one-dimensionally that you're just going to get a job as an artist first, because sometimes, like, I can guarantee that every single person listening can qualify to be a video game tester, right? So if you build up the right relationships and you get a role as a video game tester first, then you can network across the industry and find network across a company and find opportunities to, like, these people that you're chatting with, 40 plus hours a week, that really allows you to get to know them and get to know them beyond just the workplace. Like, what are the things that you're interested in? Like, hey, do you like the San Diego Padres? And if you do, what a coincidence, I've got some Padres gear and I can give it to you, right? So just being authentic and helping others get what they want. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with your portfolio specifically or your profession. It's just being a human being and saying, hey, what are the things that you need? And here's how I can either help you myself or point you in the right direction to somebody that I know that can help you.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Yeah. And what kind of examples would you like to share, Grazia?
Yeah, I mean, so I just want to touch on one thing too, because I will say, like, for particularly in animation, right, especially if you're looking for these creative roles, your portfolio is what is going to be looked at first, right? So, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that, but that is what's going to get you seen, and then your interview is what's going to secure, right? Your interviews is going to be like where you're going to lock that opportunity in. So examples of good communication around that is to really be prepared to speak to your work, right? And going back to authenticity. Why are you designing the way are you designing? Be able to speak to that. Be able to show what you're passionate about. If you're telling me you want to be a biz dev artist, it should align to your portfolio, and then communicating, like, what kind of storyteller do you want to be? So I think it's being able to connect, like, the individual to be able to, like, this is what I truly want to be doing. This is what I'm truly passionate about. This is truly what, like, the direction I want to be going, and know that. And sometimes you don't, like, sometimes it might take a minute. I'm new in the industry, emerging talent. Maybe, you're just graduating school or you're self-taught, whatever the case may be. So, but being just open and honest. And that's the other thing, right? Like, just be honest. I'm not sure. I'm still undecided, but I know this is something that I really like doing. And, sometimes it's just being that vulnerable and humble, but showing that passion and that drive in the way you communicate that as you talk through your experience, if that's through school, if that's through, I've spoken to folks that haven't even had, they're self-taught. Like, I started out I was studying biochemistry, or I'm a trained French horse player, and during COVID, I lost my job, but I always had this passion for animation, and I just taught myself how to do animation. And like, wow, right? That drive, those sorts of things. So I don't know if those are good, like, examples of good communication.
Very helpful, yeah.
But I think those are ways that you can position yourself in terms of how you communicate your drive, your ambition, your interest, your passion for whatever direction you want to be going.
Yeah. And I love that advice, because I remember, when I was younger, I had a mentor essentially say to me, like, do you be passionate about what you're passionate about and communicate that effectively. You can and will get hired for what you bring to the table, as opposed to just trying to be a chameleon and sort of like, well, I'm like this now and now I'm like that. I hear you saying, like, that's part of that authenticity factor, is it's like, this person's really, they're doing what they love, and they're communicating effectively that they can do what they love and use that to serve the studios, use that to serve the story of what you're looking for.
And
I think,
Adam, if I can add, I'm sorry, because it just came to me too, is just be really clear on what you want to do, right? I think, and understanding, like, so animation, right, we look for very specialized skill sets. So sometimes I have
Mhm.
a lot of folks who are like, I love to do everything. I can do this. I can do this for you. And I can do that for you. And that is fantastic. But that can also be sometimes perceived as like, well, you don't really then know what you want to do, or there's a lot you want to do. But in reality, we're like studios may be only looking for this one particular thing.
Mhm.
And so that's the piece where that sort of honing in on your skills and what you're truly, because, then when I'm asked the question of like, what are you truly passionate about? Like, what really motivates you? And
Mhm.
then, all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, I really love this. And then why do you love that? Because it gives me an opportunity to be part of, like, I get to contribute the story, or I get to feel like I have some way of contributing to the design of the character, or
Mhm.
helping to steer the story in it. And then like, right, then you start peeling back those layers and like, okay, well, now this is where I see there's like, here's where your full potential can come into play. And then, right, so then if the question gets to a place where it's like, what do I need to stand out? Well, here's what you can do to help better stand out. Now that we know, like, we get down to that
Yeah.
core of
Yep.
what it is you're truly passionate about, now we can have a conversation of what you need to do to get there.
Yeah, and
All
I
right, went
think
off a
that
little.
no, this is exactly why we're here. That's great. And I think that goes in line also, I think, with what you were saying earlier, Steve, about, this like this desperation sometimes people can approach the situation with. I think, at least in my experience, working with artists who are both out there, looking to build a career, but also artists looking for education, some of that desperation to just, well, I'll do anything, and not that sort of like, this is what I'm about, comes from this idea that, well, there's a huge scarcity of jobs, out there. There's so few of them, to get one is really, really hard. So you need to be desperate and be willing to do anything. What would you guys speak to that mindset about, like, well, there's probably so few openings in, in these creative studios for artists?
So actually, one of the things that I would recommend is for anyone out there that doesn't quite know exactly, like if they haven't identified one passion that they have,
Mhm.
something that I'd recommend for video game developers is go to like work at an indie company, because in an indie company, um, there is like the having jack of all trades is very helpful, because
Mhm.
in a small team, if you've only got 13 people working on a game, you're going to have to wear multiple hats. So that's a
Mhm.
very good way to kind of figure out, is there something that you want to specialize in? Is it animation? Is it 3D modeling? What is it for you? And that's a great way to get professional experience and to kind of hone in on, is there something that you absolutely want to specialize in?
Mhm.
And then not only that, but being a kind of jack of all trades, that gives you, that can be a very good thing when you're applying, because if you're not quite sure, but you have like a lot of little skill sets, being able to contribute wherever you're needed. So
Yeah.
if an animator goes on vacation, the main animator, and you're able to step in, at least get some stuff done, you may not be the most efficient at it, but at least you can keep the pipeline rolling. That's something that I'd recommend, is just like maybe adjust your adjust your sights to not necessarily go straight into like a AAA company, but maybe take a roundabout way going into like indie first, or doing game jams and things of that nature.
Yeah. No, that's great advice for sure. Grazia, I mean, I'm thinking of, like, representing a studio that helped to pioneer streaming. There's so much content being made. What would you speak to the subject of, like, yeah, but there's so few jobs, there's so few, openings?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I was shaking my head as Steve was
Uh,
saying all those great things, because I'm like, it's. I would say the same thing for
mhm.
animation, right? I think, you don't have to put all your eggs in one basket, like, right? There's so many. If you think about all these streaming services that are creating content, they are working with a lot of partner studios in the
Yep.
industry that are all over the world. So those are great opportunities. And again, to Steve's point, like, that might be where you just sort of get your first start and you get exposed to pipelines, you get exposed to working in a collaborative team. You might have opportunities to be more of a generalist, which was, great in terms of just learning the ins and outs of the entire production pipeline. And then that can help you then figure out where you truly want to hone in, because now you've got a little bit more, you've got some actual experience. And then that can help you. And, right. Then it gets a little tricky, because then it's staying motivated, right? Because once you get a job in the industry, it's really hard to stay motivated. And I get it. But I think, right, it's all of those things in terms of just don't put all your eggs in one basket and doing research. I mean, that's one of the things, key takeaway points I always talk to students about, or just anyone in general, is do your research on all the companies. And not at a surface level, at a deeper level, like understand, why Netflix is Netflix and what makes them right. What is their business? How do they work? Similarly with all these other companies, and who are they working with, and how to all of those things, because that'll help start connecting dots, and you can make discoveries that could really help you in terms of finding your pathway.
Yeah, totally. And there's never been a better time to do that kind of research. I mean, it's so easy to find, for an artist that wants to work in League of Legends with Riot or something like that, you can go watch interviews about the making of a game, and you can figure out what kind of problems they're trying to solve. Even 10, 15 years ago, you couldn't do research like that. There was no way to know. So it's at everybody's fingertips. I think what you guys are saying about this idea of playing the long-term goal, in a sense of people are but my dream studio is this is the top of the mountain, I'm just going to start applying to that right away, or going after jobs that are going to be within their reach strategically, because it's going to help them build up sort of that jack of all trade and understanding how studios work. I think that sets us up really well for kind of the last thing I wanted to talk to you guys about before we start taking questions from the chat. And that is, I know that watching the stream today, we probably have some students who are actively, studying at Gnomon, maybe some who are working on their demo reel, preparing to graduate, look for their job. And then we also have some that are looking to Gnomon as a possible place to get education. And this question isn't meant to be a commercial for Gnomon, as much as I know that one of the things that we've learned from working with studios like yours as a school is that having a broader skill set than just the one thing you're totally hyped about doing is very attractive to being hired. And that's why we structure our curriculum the way that we do. We teach everybody all the jobs in the pipeline, and then let you build skills, on the area that you're passionate about. Could you speak a little bit more to that subject, specifically about outside of the one job you're applying for? What are some of the other things that makes a potential hire attractive, in terms of whether they've learned it at a school like Gnomon, or they've taken the time over years to learn those skills in other studios? And I hope the question's coming across clearly, but that idea of yeah, we're going to bring you on as a junior animator, or we're going to bring you on as a junior character artist for our games team. But it really helps us bring you into a studio like ours, if you also know a lot of this other stuff. Can you unpack that a little bit more for us? And maybe you already did, but kind of knowledge of more of the pipeline than just the one thing you're passionate about doing.
So for me, one of the things that I love about Gnomon in particular is preparing the students for a professional environment. And when it comes to, if I'm looking through resumes and if I see Gnomon on somebody's resume, I have a general idea that this person has significant experience, not just with the quality of the work that they're doing, but being able to work in a team environment. And even though they, if somebody has a great portfolio, seeing where they come from, that is super helpful, because just understanding the rigor of the program that they went through. Okay. And that's something where the skill sets, these are skill sets that I know are taught at at Gnomon in particular. And another one of those things is the connections, because I understand that Gnomon has excellent relationships across the industry. And because they've proactively developed those relationships with people at the companies, it can be a faster way of getting your name recognized, because there's a direct connection as opposed to just blind applying online and submitting a resume and just praying that, you know, somebody's going to actually take a look at your portfolio, especially when there are thousands upon thousands of people that are applying to these roles. So just using the brand, that's super in my eyes to just getting, you know, finding high quality candidates.
Yeah. Well, and a quick follow up to that. I mean, whether or not they've built that network, you know, in a short period of time at Gnomon, or they've built that network over time, you know, applying to indie studios and stuff like that. How does that, I mean, because I know that if someone's applying and you see, you know, their application, their portfolio, but they're also able to say, like, I know this person in your studio. What does that do for you as a recruiter to be able to, I mean, do you have access to go to those other people and be like, hey, can you tell me about this person? How does that work out on your end?
So for me, absolutely, because one of the problems of being a recruiter is having multiple roles to fill at once. And it's not like we just get one role and we have forever to kind of find the ideal candidate after screening everybody's resumes. That just is not realistic, considering how many applicants there are and how many roles that we need to fill. So having a word of confidence from somebody, especially like a referral, that's huge, because it makes my job as a recruiter easier. So just having the assurance that somebody is willing to put their reputation on the line for someone else, because nobody wants to be the person that makes a recommendation of somebody that is not qualified for the job, because it makes everybody look bad, right? And it's not good for the company. So making a recommendation for somebody that you absolutely wholeheartedly trust in, but they're only going to make that recommendation if there's tons of confidence, whether it's through experience, multiple experience, or just having familiarity with the program that somebody went through.
And then for you, Grazia, do you find that particularly hiring for like Viz Dev for animation and that kind of stuff, do you find that there are other adjacent, almost like generalist skill sets that's good for candidates to have outside of just the one thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think even if it's just I don't want to say just storyboarding but storyboarding or visual development, it's really good to understand the entire production pipeline, because it's all contributing to, right? The storyboards are going to get handed off to the previs layout team, and the previs layout team is going to rely on those storyboards to then know like what they need to start doing on the previs side in terms of like the timing, the action, all those sorts of things. The visual development is going to become the blueprint of what is going to be used for the rest of the production pipeline. So Viz Dev designs around characters, props, environments are going to go to the modeling team. So the modeling team knows how they're going to design their models and build out these worlds and characters and so forth, right? Viz Dev is going to get handed off to the texturing, surfacing team so that they understand. So all of those are sort of what I call like bookends. And so I think when we look at work, it's just not for just like, oh, this person's a really great painter, or this person's really got great design sensibilities, which are all really important. But also what's going to help is that what they're designing or how they're boarding is they understand how they're doing that's going to be fed into the rest of the pipeline, and how that translates into the 3D side of things, if it's a 3D animated film or if it's 2D series, right? All of those things, knowing how you put all of that together and how that's going to translate, that'll show up in your work in some way. And that's kind of what makes is going to separate someone who is just doing fan art, right? And I don't want to say just doing fan art, because there's some fantastic fan art, and I've seen they'll take like like IP, right? Like someone taking something like from Netflix and then turning it into an animated cartoon series. It's like, wow, this is fantastic. That's still kind of fan art, but they've taken it to another level.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it, do you feel, because I talk to a lot of aspiring artists that are like, I really want to get into viz dev. I want to get more on, almost the pre-production side of things, even though that's becoming more and more like fused with the production pipeline. And a lot of, I think, aspiring viz dev artists they really enjoy 2D art. They love drawing, they love painting, they love setting up the illustration, indicating light and material and all that kind of stuff. Do you find that, based on like what you were saying about knowledge of the rest of the pipeline, do you guys look for viz dev artists who also have learned some 3D and can execute some things in 3D, or at least understand how 3D artists need to work?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole part of the industry that's called look development.
Right.
And these are folks that have they come with a traditional, right? But like visual development and illustration, but they also know how to translate that into CG, so they can model, they can texture.
Right. Yeah.
They can do a little, they don't have to be as proficient as a viz dev artist, but they understand like taking the 2D and translating it into 3D. And that will help. Like that'll help a lot. Because if you're designing, you understand what you're designing for. And so having that 3D knowledge can be really helpful.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm going to jump straight into the chats, or the questions beginning in the chat, because I want to make sure we have some time for that. And I think we have a chance to kind of deal with a few of these questions at once, because I've seen a few questions come in from artists that are living outside of the US. But the types of studios that they are interested in getting a job in, or even just the studios they would need to apply to in the beginning, are outside of their country of origin. So like one, I think, is an artist who's in India, who is like really interested in some of the studios in Canada, crossing those kinds of boundaries and oceans and so forth. Is there any advice that you have for artists that would be applying for roles that would require them to leave their country of origin and come overseas, or even potentially working as an outsourced artist remaining in their country, working with a studio?
So in my experience, going from a big part of it is just eligibility, because not all countries can hire from across the world, just because of legalities, and a lot of those I really don't know, and it's very much on a company to company basis. Where I do see it being a possibility is if you're going to make a direct application, like you have to be world class. I'm talking like if you're playing basketball, you've got to be NBA level, like won awards and stuff like that, world renowned and recognized. That's where you can make that transition happen. If not quite that, another way that I've seen is maybe starting with maybe a branch where you do qualify to work. So for example, there are some companies that are worldwide, and if you want to work in the US, this US-based company also has an office in like Singapore. So maybe you work at Singapore first and build your reputation there, and there may be another opportunity for you to transfer from that studio to the one in the US.
That's great advice.
Those are the only ways that I've seen it possible.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's the same in animation. I think there's a lot of legalities when it comes to hiring internet, and that's outside of a company's, like the company's hands. Like that's just part of government. And so, but everything that Steve said is spot on in terms of
awesome.
Of global international talent. Excuse me.
That advice, I think, too, of like realizing there might be other studios or adjacent studios that are not in the country you're trying to get into, that might be closer to you and easier for you to get access to. That's great advice. Let's see. I've noticed a few questions come in. I think we've already dealt with in terms of like effective ways to present yourself to a recruiter and that kind of stuff. But let's see. Okay, and if you guys have anything to speak to this question, this is an interesting one, and I'll let you guys choose what scope you want to address it as or at. But the question is, I'm currently working in an indie game studio, and my question is there any tip or thought process about managing stress are having good communication with other artists. They said that they're struggling in both of those areas. And I realize that's more internal once the person's been hired. But do you guys have anything that you can speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all learned over the last 3 years, like mental health is like a priority. And working in a studio, I feel very blessed to have been in a place where very supportive studio. And so I think that's the thing of like, you know, hopefully you're in a place where the studio is very supportive, and that you feel like you can have an open, honest conversation about whatever challenges. And I think that goes back to like what we talked about is just the transparency, honesty, and you know, just an openness of being able to communicate. And, you know, I'll be honest too, if that is not the environment, then maybe that's not the right place for someone as well, right? If you don't feel like, if you're at a place and you don't feel like you have that kind of support, or you don't feel that there's a place for you to be able to voice that, that is a minute of like, you know, maybe assessing is this really the right environment for you?
Sure.
And that can be a very tough like that could be a very tough thing, but you know, I know people who've had challenges and then come to the realization that they need a different environment.
Yeah.
For me, with regards to managing stress, like I love this topic because managing stress can come from so many different directions. And one of the big parts is identifying what is the actual stress, right? So I think that's a big part of it first. And I'm a huge supporter of personal development and learning these skills. So that's, for me personally, I've read tons of books, watched tons of videos, taken tons of courses on how to make myself better. So instead of wishing that the people around me were better and wish that they would meet all of my wishes, if I can strengthen myself, my own mental health, my own mental strength, it makes it easier for the rest of my team. So I think that's one thing, is one, taking responsibility that there's so many things that I can do for myself to help affect my environment instead of wishing the environment were different for me. So that's number
absolutely.
one. Part of it is seeking professional help. So seeking therapists, absolutely a big supporter of that, because having a professional help me unpack what are all of the feelings and emotions that I'm going through. Like I've got so much stuff that I'm dealing with from my personal past that I don't even know about yet. So having a professional to really help me unpack those things, that helps me relieve my stress so that my stress isn't bleeding on to all of my coworkers.
Yeah.
And then also learning skills like meditation, work-life balance, finding supportive people, understanding how to have difficult conversations. Those are all skills that you can learn, and there are tons of books that I'd love to recommend if you guys want.
Yeah, awesome. And then let's see, CG Place. I see your question about art fundamentals and you know the importance of them to larger studios and resources for that. That's something I'll address in the short talk that I'm going to give about education at Gnomon after the interview. So just so you know that we'll also be addressing your question. The next question is, I would love to become a recruiter in the film/game industry because, let's see, because as you said, Steve, I love to help people find the job of their dreams. Any advice on how to build my career towards being a recruiter for entertainment?
For me, recommendation one, look at a recruiter job description and look at all of the topics, or all of the skills that they're looking for, and then reverse engineer that. So if they're looking for people with experience with certain ATSs or tracking systems, find ways to get experience with those. I would say also, like, connect with tons of recruiters and find ways that you can help them. Because if you see a recruiter and see they're recruiting for software engineers, if you help bring quality candidates to that recruiter, you're showcasing that you know what it takes to find qualified candidates.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a prime example of, instead of waiting to be hired in order to do something professionally, find opportunities where you can volunteer and create experiences where you're getting, create opportunities where you're getting that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this next question I find really interesting. Someone's just asking, and maybe we'll round robin this a little bit just to expedite the question. So I'll pose this question to Grazia. Is there any age limit for hiring beginners or junior artists?
Yeah, I mean, at least 18 or older, right? Because minors, there's a lot of legalities around that. Just again, legal, like legalities around a lot of things.
Right.
But yeah, 18 is the min that we can hire.
And then also, I think the other side of the question too is like, what about someone who is later in life that's looking to work as a junior or get their first job? Is that how old is too old, or is that an issue?
I don't know if it's an issue, but I think, again, it comes down to all of the things that we've been talking about in terms of like, what are you truly passionate about? How are you preparing? Like, do you have those skills? How are you presenting yourself? I don't, in this industry, it's not an age thing, or it shouldn't be. I mean, I think, you can be an artist at any age. So I don't think that makes a difference. I think, again, it's just going to come down to more about what you're truly passionate about, and then, your work, your skills that you're going to bring to the table is what's going to really be important.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, and then I'll pose the next question to Steve. And I'm going to add a little bit of a dimension to this question too. Hopefully the person who asked it doesn't mind. The question is, do recruiters often go back to old job applications when finding potential artists for new roles opening in the industry? Like, do you go back through your backlog? And I'm going to personally add on to that. Even if you do, is it just more important to just keep staying in contact and keep sending your resume into the same studio and the same recruiter?
I would say yes, definitely going back into the backlog, because part of it is knowing that jobs are opening and closing all the time, right? So if I know an amazing 3D artist and I don't have a job for them at this moment, I'm mentally keeping them a note, and that's why we have databases to hold this information, so that when the role does open up, like I get the role across my desk, immediately I'm thinking, who are the people that I know, like, and trust that I can reach out to see if they're available. And if I don't know anybody off the top of my head, that's where I can go into our database or a tool like LinkedIn and then do the search from there. So yes, it's absolutely possible to look at older job applications and older resumes. But the thing is, part of it is who's fresh in my mind that I can reach out to immediately.
Yeah.
So, like, if I have a conversation with somebody today, if the ideal job opens up 6 months from now, am I going to remember this conversation?
Yeah.
Maybe not likely. So that's why the consistent kind of chiming in and reminders is so important.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Let's see.
Adam, just really quickly?
Definitely.
And everything, +1 to everything that Steve said, and that's why it's also really important to keep your profiles, your LinkedIn, whatever it is, your websites continuously updated, because you just never know when, right? And so if I remember talking to this person 6 months ago or maybe a year ago, and then I go back and I'm like, oh, this is the same. What have they been doing in the last year? That sort of thing. So it's really important. It's 2 ways, right? It's really important to keep that updated, because you just never know, like, when all of a sudden something will come up and recruiters are going back out of like, I remember I had looked at this pool of candidates. Where are they now?
Right.
What are they doing? What have they updated? So that's really important.
Absolutely. So I'll let either one of you grab this one. Someone is asking about including non-art related work experience on a resume when they're applying for an art related job. Like, does it help? Are there other areas that could be included if they have experience in it? For example, if they've had experience teaching, or they've had experience, doing other things that might not be directly related to the position. Do you like to see that other stuff as well?
Yes. I mean, I think those sorts of things speak to, right, the communication skills, speak to if you've worked in a team environment, all of those sorts of things. Those are all really important. I will be very honest, when we're looking at creative roles, we don't look at resumes. Resumes are sort of kind of the after, like, right, I'm going to look at a portfolio. Am I seeing like, this is fantastic? Am I seeing some potential here? Great. Now I'm going to go to the resume and I'm going to take a look. Okay, what's this person's experience? What have they been doing? What are their technical, like the softwares that they've been working in, those sorts of things. And then, oh, wow, they worked on an indie project where they were the lead animator and they contributed and they, you know, managed a team of 6 animators that, you know, had to do A, B, C, and D. Now it's like, oh, I have the full picture. Not only does this person have the really great art skills, but they've also applied it in some practical way. And that's kind of what's going to sort of bring people up, surface them up.
That's such helpful perspective too, right? Because I hear you saying it's both and. I mean, obviously the portfolio comes first. So if you can lock yourself in with your portfolio, then it's going to open up the door to, okay, now let's learn more about this person and see kind of the other dimensions beyond their work. That's awesome. Well, we're unfortunately at time. I know that we weren't able to get to literally every question in the chat, but I do feel like we've covered enough of like having something for everyone. So this has been an awesome conversation. I always like to close out these talks with sort of a final question of and it doesn't have to be the be all end all, like greatest answer ever. It just can be whatever comes to mind for you. But is there any piece of advice you would like to share with younger aspiring artists that want to get ready to eventually be applying for the kind of roles that you guys are hiring for?
Grazia?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Mike, you know what? Just get involved. Get out there, do the research, get involved, better understand, practice your art, practice your skill. And the other thing is, don't give up, and be patient. Give yourself grace. We know that you're learning. You don't have to know it all, but definitely stay focused, stay motivated, don't give up, and just truly follow your passion.
Yeah, awesome.
For me, I would say networking within the industry that you want to be in is absolute key. And one of the things I'll recommend is like find a way to surround yourself with people that are constantly improving, and find people that you can work with like as a team. And I'm going to invite everybody on this call to connect with me on LinkedIn. And I would love to help support each and every one of you in your careers, right? Because if you post something on LinkedIn, allow me to like and comment on it. And you can leverage my 15 plus years of connections in the industry to help you find the career that you're absolutely passionate about. And you'll wake up every day excited to do what you do. So find ways, keep in touch, and who knows how this one interaction right now can play for all of us in the future. Because I may be looking for a role 5 years from now, and one of you out there in the audience might be the CEO of a company. And who knows, maybe this interaction might be helpful for me just as much as it's helpful for you. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and I think for either one of you, folks can just simply search your names that we've been putting up on the screen in LinkedIn. And I know that as we were getting ready for the interview, I did the same thing, and you guys are pretty easy to find. So shouldn't be difficult at all. And if you guys need to go back and find spelling and all of that later, both Grazia and Steve, their names and who they are is posted in the event description on the Gnomon website as well. But guys, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to jump on the call. This has been incredibly valuable. I know that so many of the artists have been watching. You guys have shared some really great knowledge and perspective bombs that I know is going to help everybody kind of sharpen their sword and get ready for what they need to go into. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
All right,
thank you.
Well, guys, please extend your thanks to both Grazia and Steve in the chat. And as they head out of the studio or head out of the call, I want to invite anybody who's interested in learning more about Gnomon to stick around with me for another 15 minutes. I'm just going to get a little bit of a talk on the types of careers that are available for artists in the areas that Gnomon trains for. And I also want to introduce a colleague of mine, Zach Mendoza. We'll just bring Zach up on the screen really quickly. Hey, Zach.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Adam.
Yeah, so guys, Zach is one of Gnomon's super awesome advisors. And you know, what Zach and the rest of the team that he's a part of do for Gnomon is really, really important, because at Gnomon, we do things really, really differently. And you know, our advisors, including Zach, they want to get to know you and actually coach you in your artwork and help you build an application portfolio to the school before you ever apply. And if you're wondering when, you know, when do I know if I'm ready to reach out to Zach or the advisor team at Gnomon, you're ready now. If you're interested, that makes you ready. Zach, if you want to, if you want to take just a minute to expand on that just a little bit and kind of express like why it's important for these guys to get in touch with you, please do so. And then as I get into the presentation, Zach is going to be in the chat to answer questions as we go through it. So yeah, tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Gnomon.
Yes, thank you so much, Adam. And yeah, I love talking art. Me and my fellow admissions advisors, we're all artists, and this is our bread and butter. We love reviewing work. It's so gratifying to see someone's work develop. So no matter where you are at in your stage of artistic development, I think it's really helpful to get feedback from as many people as possible, but certainly from other artists. And so I think that please don't feel discouraged. You'll see a lot of awesome work on ArtStation, on Gnomon's Reels and things. But everybody, we all start somewhere, and you might also be professional yourself. And even so, I think it's still helpful to get some feedback. So that's something we love doing. Whether you're considering applying for Gnomon or not, just feel free to reach out anytime. And yeah, we love taking time and sharing personalized feedback to help you better yourself as an artist.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Zach. And so, guys, as I'm getting ready to share a little bit about Gnomon, I want to invite you. This isn't meant to be a lecture. So Zach is going to be in the chat. And as you're thinking of things that you'd want to know about Gnomon while I'm sharing, just feel free to type them in, get into a conversation with Zach in the chat in real time while I'm going through his material. And as you can see, he's super friendly. He's a really nice guy. This is the kind of person that you want to talk to and that you want to share your art with, because you're going to get really constructive and helpful feedback. So with that said, let's jump into it really quickly. For those of you who are not familiar with Gnomon, we are, in essence, we are a 3D art school. Our campus is in Hollywood, California, and we specialize in training artists for careers in making the 3D art and animation for games, animation, and also CG for film. And we've been doing this. We're in our 25th year now of doing this. We've been around for quite a while. We're really good at what we do. I'm just going to pass by really quickly a screen. I won't go through all these, but we've won a lot of really great awards over the years. And for some of these awards are really, really important to us. These are things like ranking #1 in both worldwide and the US as a school for learning game art and things like that. And another award that's, not necessarily art related, that we're super proud of is we've won awards for how effective our graduates are at paying off loans and things like that, because sometimes that's necessary for education. So that's important to us. But getting into the real meat of it, we are super, super proud of our alumni and the kind of projects that they work on. And so this is just a sampling of some of the projects that Gnomon alumni have worked on. And there's so many more that they're actively working on now. And then this is an example of some of the studios, just a small sampling of studios, obviously the names that most people are going to recognize, who are regularly hiring graduates from our full-time programs. And you'll see at the top there that term industry placement. So in 2021, even while we were still in the midst of and coming through a pandemic, still 90% of our graduates placed in the industry. In previous years, you can see that it was much more than that. And even now, we're up over the mid 90th percentile. The way that we define this, and the reason why this is so important, is for us, that is the percentage of graduates from our full-time programs who started their first job in a studio doing the stuff that they trained in at Gnomon within just 6 months of finishing the program. And that is the thing that drives everything that we do as a school. We exist not just to teach you skills and let you figure out how to turn that into a job. We exist to make you ready to start working in this industry. And we'll teach you also, the self-presentation side of it, how to go through interviews, how to prepare a demo reel for the specific type of studio you want to work in. So all of that is weaved into our program at Gnomon. And the proof, of course, is that so many of our alumni are out there doing really, really awesome stuff. All right, so moving forward, I want to talk to you really quickly about how Gnomon is preparing artists. What is it that we teach? Well, we are a 4-year Bachelor of Fine Arts degree program, as well as another 2-year certificate program. But what we're teaching at Gnomon is one thing, it's hyper-focused. The term for it is digital production. Now, that's an industry term that really is just sort of an umbrella idea that incorporates these kinds of skills. So these are things like computer-based visual effects, character and creature design, digitally sculpting characters and creatures, animating those characters and creatures, doing the same thing like creating 3D environments, lighting and rendering those environments, matte painting, inserting elements into the background and extending sets, compositing, game asset creation, game engines like Unreal Engine, production workflows, and world building. Now, some of those skills or names for those skills you might recognize, some of them might be new to you, but each one of those skill sets translate into these careers. So every single title that you see on the screen is a different role within the digital production pipeline for both film and television as well as video games. And what I want to do is highlight just a few of them really quickly for you. Every one of these terms can be its own career path, totally on its own, for years and years and years and years. So looking at these really quickly, you'll see how different they are from one another. So this first one here is a character artist or a creature artist, depending on what you're making. And these are artists that literally make the actual 3D character or creature that is the one that you see on screen, whether you're interacting with it in a game or watching it in a film or on a TV show. And these artists use software called ZBrush, which allows them to use traditional sculpting techniques like you would in clay, but to do it digitally with 3D clay on the computer. And this is a really fulfilling role for people who love to draw characters and creatures and spend a lot of their time thinking about how to tell a story with a character or creature. And what these artists do is they might get a concept sketch from early development in the pipeline, but then they have to figure out how to interpret that concept or that idea and design an actual, lifelike 3D character or creature based on that. The next role we want to look at are effects artists. And I like to affectionately say that effects artists essentially sit in front of their computers all day blowing things up. Like they will take, something like this space station from the film Gravity, which I'm sure that countless artists spent months and months and months and months working on, getting it just right. And they take that very precious model, and their job is to blow it up, to obliterate, to ruin it, and to make it look really cool in the process. So what these artists are doing is, instead of creating these kind of animatics kind of by hand like you would with a character, what they need to do is, because these things are so complex and there's so many moving parts, they're using special software that drives simulations of real world physics. So what that means is they are kind of using these simulations as their colors and their palette and their paintbrushes to get stuff to look real and believable, but also to show the audience something they've never seen before, and to solve problems about how to take something fantastical that's going to happen, like a giant spacecraft coming out of the sea, which none of us have actually seen in real life, I think. If you have, that's awesome. But something like this, doesn't really exist, but we have to make it look like it would. And so these are the artists that make that happen. I like to say that effects artists, if they were a class or a member of a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, these would be the wizards and the sorcerers. So this is a really cool job for someone who's curious about how things work, wants to kind of summon those elemental forces and make rad stuff like this on screen. The third type of job we're going to look at is what a compositor does. Now, the compositor is almost at the very end of the pipeline for creating any sort of like film or television. And their role is, like you're seeing here, they bring all of the different pieces together into a final scene that looks like everything was just shot in camera. So here you see the background. Tennis courts are 3D models with lighting on them. The tennis players are actors that are filmed in front of green screens. The props and buildings in the foreground are in 3D. Texturing and colors put on them, as well as lighting. Additional actors are inserted, and then finally it's put all together, and a camera is animated, through that scene. And this is what we call an establishing shot for film. And this is really, really usefully done in different digital pieces that get woven together by the compositor, because now the director does not have to find the perfect location with everything existing in camera, and they don't have to find permits to film there and hire all the actors and get the film crew together. Instead, they can say, this is the sort of shot we need. Here's the stuff that exists that we can film, and here's the stuff that we need digitally. Studio makes all that stuff, and then they give all those different pieces to the compositor, and the compositor is the one who just weaves it all together. So if you're interested in that kind of movie magic, making something look 100% believable, bringing all the different pieces together, this could be a great role for you in production. And the last job that we want to look at, and granted, these are only 4 of many, many types, but the last one is a previs artist. And what a previs artist does is they are kind of like a director trapped in an animator's body. You like thinking like a director, you like thinking like a cinematographer, and you want to tell the big story, get the big picture across. So these are animators that are creating a lot of like simpler 3D models. They're doing simpler forms of animation because they need to do it quickly, because their job is to create animations that kind of shows you what the movie is going to look like before they actually make the movie. So if you want to make 3D models and you want to animate, but you'd rather do more with the story than just focus on one little piece of it, this could be a great job for you. And these animators and modelers get to sit down with the director and hear the director's vision, often one-on-one, and they kind of make this stuff to vision out there in front of the rest of the team. All right, so with just 4 of those careers in mind and how different they can be from each other, I want to really quickly tell you about Gnomon's academic offerings. This is what you see on the screen here. This is all of them. So we are a very hyper-focused school. We don't have like a bunch of different kinds of arts programs. We are focused on just this stuff, and we use all of our resources to aim at preparing artists for these types of roles. So you can see in the upper left-hand corner, we have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. That is a fully accredited 4-year college degree in learning all of this stuff. Next to it on the right side at the top, we have a certificate program. This is a 2-year full-time degree that is more advanced and more intensive than the 4-year degree. These 2 years, you're taking more classes. The intensity and level of study is a little bit more akin to if you were in a master's program, although there isn't really a master's degree in digital production. But this is more like hyper intense Navy SEALs training for people who may have already gone to college and are not looking for a degree, or have a certain level of art proficiency that just need that intensive training to learn these things and get out there and start working. Now, both of those programs require an application portfolio, working with an admissions advisor, someone like Zach who's in the chat, and we will take as much time as you need upfront before you apply and help you build your application portfolio. We will offer you art mentorship and help you have the best chances of success when you ultimately do apply to that program. Now, on the bottom row, we've got 2 offerings that don't require a portfolio application. One is our Foundation in Art and Design, and the foundation is designed to help you build a portfolio at Gnomon. It gets you into a year of courses that are going from like foundational art skills to like figure drawing and anatomy for artists, and then eventually into entertainment design classes like character design, creature design, environments, vehicles, mechs, weapons, and so forth. And this is a great way to get a lot of those foundational skill sets that Gnomon would want to see in a portfolio if you haven't had a chance to learn that kind of stuff yet. And then lastly, we have over 70 individual courses available. So these are the same classes that our full-time degree students and certificate students are taking, but you can choose individual classes and kind of take them a la carte. You don't have to send in a portfolio to apply, but I would definitely advise reaching out to someone like Zach, and he'll let you know how, because we're totally ready to offer you advice on, even if you want to take just one class at Gnomon on an evening or a weekend or something like that, finding the right class that's the next step for you in your development as an artist. So moving forward, I'll just briefly say about our Bachelor of Fine Arts degree program and our 2-year certificate program, these are programs that you can apply to 4 times out of the year. So it's not just about the fall. You can apply to any one of the terms: fall, winter, spring, summer. And in these full-time programs, you are going to learn the whole pipeline. So like Grazia and Steve were saying earlier, a artist that has a broader generalist skill set, that is a foundation for the thing that they really love doing, that makes them really attractive for a studio. It makes them more useful as a team member. And so both of these full-time programs are designed to teach you all of the jobs in the studio and then let you build extra skills in that area. And if you have more questions about, well, what kind of classes are a part of that, and what are the different roles in the pipeline I'd be learning, what are the different opportunities I have to build extra skill in the area that I like, that's what our admissions team is available for, and Zach can help answer your questions about that. I already covered the foundation in art design. It's really just foundational art classes and design classes that will help you develop the skill sets that we're looking for students who apply to our programs. And you can, for the individual classes, you can simply go on our website, browse through them, and you can even sign up and pay for an individual class right there on the website. If you want more advice about what class is the best fit for you, our advisors are available to you. And so in finishing, I just want to mention again what I said earlier when I introduced Zach to you, is that admissions at Gnomon, if you're interested in getting into one of the 2 full-time programs, we do this really differently. And a lot of people, it's easy to miss what this opportunity is because it's not like any other art school experience. What we want to do is our team of advisors, and this is them, they're all super cool people, and they're creatives and artists themselves. They want to offer you coaching and mentorship up front before you apply to the school. And that's going to look like not just answering questions about our educational programs and financial aid and all of that. It's also going to be them looking at your artwork, and not evaluatively to determine, whether you're, going to be accepted or not in the program. They're just going to look at your artwork, hear about your goals, what you want to do as an artist, and they're going to help you level up. And if Gnomon is the right fit for you, they're also going to tell you exactly what Gnomon would want to see in your portfolio when you apply, and you can continue to get input from them as you build that portfolio. That's something that we do. There's no strings attached. You don't even have to make a commitment to apply once you've had that kind of mentorship. The reason why we do this is we want to make sure that whoever does apply to our programs and whoever we do admit into our programs, that we are actually exactly the right fit for them, that we're going to be what they're looking for, what they're ready for, and so that they will stay with that program, because our curriculum is no joke. It's tough work, but it's worth it, because the payoff in the end is that if you apply yourself and you have that drive as you go through a 4-year or 2-year program at Gnomon, you will be graduating as someone who is ready to go out there and get their first job and start working in this industry. So with that, I do want to invite anybody who's in the area or is going to be in the area to come and take a tour of our campus in Hollywood. Again, our advisors are available on our campus to offer private tours. So if you wanted to come down and see our digital labs, our VR lab and library and sculpture lab, you can do that. And while you're being shown around by an advisor, you guys can get into that conversation and ask your questions and talk about your artwork and that kind of stuff. And we also have a lot of events and live streams, just like today's stream, that we offer and communicate about regularly on social media. So please follow us on Instagram or Facebook, and you will be able to learn about upcoming events. This is just a sampling of past events we've done, really cool projects, awesome artists that we get to talk to. But lastly, I'll just say, we really do want to get to know you. So if you're interested in our school, even if you're not sure if we're the right fit for you yet, we'd love an opportunity to help you level up in your art and take the next steps that are the best for you. We would like to offer you more resources and get you access to events. I also host a Discord server for aspiring artists that are interested in Gnomon. We have regular meetups. We work on art together, and it becomes a great forum for sharing resources, answering questions, and that kind of stuff. So Zach has been sharing a paper form link in the chat. This QR code here actually is something you could literally just point your camera on your phone at and get access to that same paper form link. That is just an online contact card that you can fill out that is going to get admissions and our team of advisors to reach out to you. We're not a hard sell. We're not going to pester you at dinner time for the rest of your life. We're really just going to send you an email and say, hey, yeah, if you want to talk to us, we'd love to hear more about you. We'd love to see your art. We'd love to hear about what your goals are as an artist and see if there's anything that we can do to help you. And so, you know, Zach and his team are ready to do that. I would just say keep an eye on your spam folder if you have filled that out, just in case their email gets relegated there. But we would love to hear from you guys. We would love to see you in future live streams. Getting in touch with missions or even filling out that contact card today will also get you access to some Zoom calls that we're also hosting with industry artists and Gnomon alumni out there working in studios. So we want to make sure that you know about all of the resources that are available to you, and that, you know, whatever we have that can be of benefit to you is going to help you make those next steps that you need to make as an artist. So I want to thank everybody for joining today's stream. Thank you again to both Grazia Como and Steve Meim for giving of their time and really sharing that insider's perspective from what the people who are hiring for studios are looking for. I hope that this has been a benefit for you, and we'd love to see you on future streams. So my name's Adam Hartel. It's been a pleasure hosting you, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future. And have a great day, everybody.